Zettel für die lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich den gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht, fahrt mal weg, ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du scheinst da, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Als ich dir den weiße dann, wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Well, hello and welcome back to another edition of PA Dutch Live. We are so excited to be back with everybody, and it is now Mats, or as we say in Pennsylvania Dutch, March. I can't believe it. This is our 3rd episode. We had such positive feedback from our January episode with Patrick Donmoyer talking about New Year's traditions, and then we had our February episode with the one and only Dr. Bill Donner, where we had a lot of great conversation about Groundhog Day and the traditions of the Groundhog Lodges. And this month we're back, and it is March, and we're soon going to be rolling into the Eastertide season. And I thought, what better time to talk about some very unique traditions of the Pennsylvania Dutch, and that are related with this time of the year. And I welcomed back, and graciously he accepted to come back. He must have had a good time the first time around. So we welcome back Patrick Donmoyer, our good friend, who will be having a conversation with me here in a little bit, all about those Eastertide traditions among the Pennsylvania Dutch. But I do have a couple of announcements. I always like to start off letting everybody know what's going on out there in the greater Pennsylvania Dutch world. Sadly, of course, COVID is still going on, and a lot of events have either been turned into virtual events or canceled outright, postponed till 2022. But there is bright lights on the horizon. I and my wife, luckily, were able to get our vaccines this past weekend. And since we're both teachers, we got the Johnson & Johnson. So that's one shot and done. And again, thank God, neither of us had reactions. So we were really lucky. I can't say that for a lot of my colleagues in the building that I teach, but it just added one more layer of protection, of course, and also gave me a little bit more of hope for what's coming in the future. During the whole live broadcast, of course, like last time and before, I can talk with you guys in real time. So if you have questions throughout the program, put them in the chat bar. The chats will come through. I notice we already have 31 people watching. Thanks for joining us wherever you are. I see we got people from Pennsylvania. We got to show good old Chris Wartzenloof. He's a good friend that goes to a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch events. He's out there watching. We have some people joining us. Cheers from Germany. Well, cheers from Pennsylvania. Look at this. We got Norman Jung. It's midnight over there in Germany, or darn near close with the clock change. It might be only 11 o'clock. I'm not 100% sure, but he throws in Pennsylvania Dutch, Gouda, Obert aus Deutschland, greetings from Germany. I'm glad you stayed awake, Norman. Pour yourself another cup of coffee because we got a show coming for you. And Chris, I'll throw it back to Chris again. He says, stay safe and stay healthy. We're going to try, Chris. We're going to try our best. So again, one of the complaints I got from the January episode when we had Patrick on before was that I didn't allow people to ask questions. I was all excited. I was so, over the top being able to bring this program that I didn't even think about that. Well, we are going to correct that tonight because Patrick's back and he can answer darn near any question you guys might have for him. And even if he doesn't know the answer, he'll come up with something that'll make you feel good about yourself. So that's all that matters. So we will have questions and answers tonight, and join the conversation. We got people, my goodness, Illinois joining us. We have Sacramento, California. We are coast to coast and across the big pond tonight. Thanks everyone for joining us. Tell your friends, spread the link out there on social media. But as I mentioned, let's get into a couple of announcements of things coming up. Give me a second. I want to share some screen here and show you guys a couple of announcements. So the first thing that I'd really like to talk about is the fact that coming up really soon, as in, give me 1 second here, as in This coming Saturday is the Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf. You can see there on your screen, I have all the information. It is a virtual event because of COVID. Normally, this event takes place live in the big town of Bethel, Pennsylvania, there in the shadows of the Blue Mountains along I-78. But this year, because of COVID, it will be virtual. But that also means that no matter where you are in this world, you'll be able to join the fun. Everything will be taking place on their Facebook page. If you are on Facebook, just search PA German Sommerlauf. You can see the words there for you. And all the entertainment starts in, I have to admit, I'm not quite sure when the first thing starts, but all of the information is on their Facebook page that you can join. There's some pre-recorded material that's going to be shown. There's going to be a live performance at 1 p.m. with some guy by the name of Doug Maidenford. Don't know that guy, but the other name, Chris LaRose, he's worth tuning in. Trust me. Those two guys are going to be doing a Ask a Pennsylvania Dutchman live show stream for anyone that tunes in. And then later on that day, Mary Laub, who's really well known in the Pennsylvania Dutch community as someone that's working hard to produce materials for children and specifically geared towards children, she will be doing Epis for the Junge, something for the youth, so some children activities. So if you have kids, grandkids, and you want to expose them to some Pennsylvania Dutch stuff, this is a great opportunity for you, and it's all free. All it costs is your time and whatever it costs for that internet connection. So join the fun on this Saturday, the Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf. Just check their Facebook page for more information. Another thing that's coming up that's really exciting, I know our guest will talk more about this here in a minute, and that is Easter on the Farm is right around the corner. So not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, March 27th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Facebook Live. And I'm going to have Patrick, he's going to be able to tell us more about exactly all of the performers and speakers that will be taking place on Easter on the Farm. But again, normally this is an event that takes place in person. And of course, our hope is that next year, 2022, we will be able to return to in-person events. And if that is the case, God willing, this is an event that you definitely want to bring all your friends and family to next year in 2022. But for right now, you can sit in your pajamas in your living room and join us on Easter on the Farm. So please add that to your calendar, the 27th at starting at 10 a.m. on the Pennsylvania German Cultural Heritage Center's Facebook page for all of that good stuff. What other announcements do I have that I want to say? Let me look here. Oh my goodness. I wanted to mention, I'm going to talk to Patrick a little bit about this too, but the other major event that's in Pennsylvania Dutch country, of course, is the Kutztown Folk Festival. And if you haven't seen the news or heard the news, the decision came out this week on their social media feeds and through press releases that they have decided to keep, out of safety and precaution, to keep the Folk Festival virtual for this coming year, or for this year, 2021. You can find more information about that on their at their website and also on their social media feed. Sadly, it will be a virtual event, but in my personal opinion, I think it was the right decision to make to ensure that it's an event that can continue in the future. So my goal is that, yes, it's another year of virtual folk festival. However, that means we're going to have 2 years worth of bottled up, pent up excitement so that when summer 2022 rolls around and we're all on the fairgrounds there in Kutztown, it's going to be the biggest, the best festival that long festival has ever seen. And I want you guys to be sure that you're there joining with me on the festival grounds. Patrick, our guest tonight, he'll be there for sure. And we're all going to have one giant party for the folk festival in 2022. We're going to party Dutch style. So I have talked enough. Let me see if I'm missing anything here in the comment section. Not right now, but we'll keep them coming. We got 34 people walking live, but I got this guy in the green room and he needs to have the spotlight shown on him. So let me bring in the one and the only Patrick Donmoyer, our good friend, my good friend. Welcome back to PA Dutch Live.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. It's great to be back again. It feels like it was just yesterday I was here with you in January. I mean, did either of us catch our breath between now and then? That's the real question.
Probably not. And our hair did not get any grayer in those 2 months.
Check with me after Easter on the farm. We'll see.
Sounds good. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great segue. So, as I already mentioned to everybody, Easter on the Farm will be virtual this year. What can you
Yes.
tell us about what people can expect from Easter on the Farm this year?
Well, we're very shortly going to be putting out an announcement that has all of the individual presenters, musicians, and other people listed. It's going to include myself. I'm going to be giving a presentation that might have some overlap with some of the things we'll be talking about tonight, specifically talking about the traditions of springtime and Eastertide. But it's going to really extend throughout the entire season of Lent and up until about May 1st. That's going to be the spread I'm going to cover in that presentation, all the different folkloric aspects of that. And then we're going to also be having Terry Berger back, who's going to be highlighting the green salads of the Easter time that are so common, like dandelion greens and how to prepare them. We're going to have some music by Sarah Jane Williams, a wonderful harpist who's so passionate about the culture. Rachel Yoder's going to be joining us, a wonderful friend of ours who does great work. So it's going to be full of all kinds of things to see. 6 hours of programs. We're going to do some half-hour segments, and then also some that are one that's almost an hour and a half. So that's going to be great. We're looking forward to it.
That's a home run lineup, if you ever ask me. And a lot of you out there that are watching that are familiar with what we're doing here in Pennsylvania Dutch country right now, those are names that should sound very familiar to you. And if not, it's a great opportunity for you to get to know these people that are doing a lot of things in revolving around saving our culture, preserving our culture, and passing these traditions on. That is a top star lineup, Patrick. I'm looking forward to the entertainment for sure.
We are too, because we love putting it on. And I know what is in all these videos, but then on the day that it's actually airing, I sit there and enjoy it just as much as everybody else. So
Sounds good. Patrick, we invited you on tonight. So last time you were on, I'm sure you remember well, we talked about the traditions of the Pennsylvania Dutch surrounding New Year's and the beginning of the year. And I got a lot of really positive comments after the live stream was over and people saying, oh, I hadn't thought of some of that stuff since I was a kid. Thank you so much for bringing back those memories. Or another one that I often get with a lot of the stuff that you do and I do is that you made me, or you transported me back to my grandparents' kitchen. And when you think about the power of that statement, those statements, whenever I get those emails and those comments, and I get them often, and I'm not saying that to brag, I'm saying that to let you know that I read everything that people send and it touches me. That is a gift that people can, I mean, how do you even describe that gift? To be able to make somebody transport themselves, not physically, of course, but in a mental capacity back to a place that is very special to them. Your grandmother's kitchen. Is there any place more special than your grandmother's kitchen? Or, your grandparents' farmhouse on Christmas, or, these iconic images that a lot of us have from our youth that because of everything that's going, as time moves on, as life moves on, some things we stop carrying these traditions. And that was one of, our big topics to talk about last month or in January. But, if we bring some of these traditions back, it does connect us to the past. And, tonight we're going to be talking about traditions again. And a lot of things that I'm sure you're going to talk about are things that there's no reason we can't be doing these things today. And maybe it is something that you haven't done your family hasn't done for 30 years. So here's your opportunity to jump right back in. And really, and I think I mentioned this in January, Patrick, for me, as a Pennsylvania Dutchman growing up, Eastertide and this time of spring, like winter going into spring, particularly Holy Week, that's where I vividly remember probably the most traditions that my family personally carried out. And I'd love to get pick your brain on maybe why this season in particular. I can't be alone in that statement. Maybe there are other people out there that can echo that too. Why is it this season of the year out of the rest of the year that was so important to the Pennsylvania Dutch? But I'm just going to throw it open to you, Patrick. The floor is yours. But I think we have to start with today itself. Now, of course, for everybody out there, I'm not wearing any green. Patrick's not wearing any green. I got pinched a bunch of times today, but it is St. Patrick's Day, of course, and for the Irish Americans and for the Irish, a very important day. But for us Pennsylvania Dutch, we don't necessarily celebrate St. Patrick's Day, but we have our own saint day today. So let's start with what today is. March 17th is St. Gertrude's Day. Tell us a little bit about St. Gertrude.
Yes, absolutely. So And I'll just have to point out the irony of my first name being a Pennsylvania Dutch person named Patrick, who's going to be talking this evening about why historically St. Patrick's Day wasn't so much of a thing, and St. Gertrude's Day actually was. I also have some Irish ancestry as well, so I'm just as proud to be, celebrating both aspects of my heritage at the same time. But St. Gertrude is a really interesting aspect of our history. A lot of people don't necessarily remember this, but there is enough evidence out there yet, and enough people who still remember the old farmers' almanacs that specifically stated that March 17th was the day you put in your potatoes, the day you put in your cabbages, and the day you put in, for many people, their onions and their peas. And this was a special day that was marked in the calendar as St. Gertrude's Day. Now, the interesting thing about this is a lot of people don't know much about the stories of St. Gertrude. And like many saints from that time period, especially female saints who were not martyrs or anything like that, she was an abbess. So she ran an abbey. And she's St. Gertrude of Nivelles, which is technically in Belgium today. Now, why is this saint so important? The interesting aspect is she is the patron saint of gardeners. So that is part of why, of course, you're going to be thinking about gardening at this time. It corresponds to what you're supposed to be doing at that time, putting your cabbages and your peas and your onions and your potatoes in. And yet at the same time, she's also patron saint of cats. So many times historically, you look at woodcuts from the Middle Ages, she is depicted in one of two ways. She's got her, typically almost always has a staff that she's holding, but then she either has mice or rats crawling on her cloak, or she has a cat with her. And this is because she was believed to be have the power to be able to drive away vermin. And of course, this time of year, what happens when the snow melts? You see all those little runs from where the voles are in your yard. Do you have them up where you are, Doug? Do you have voles in your lawn?
Yes, I do.
And I don't know if you knew this, but the species of the vole is Pensophonicus.
Oh, really? Okay.
That is its suffix for the species. So it's a really fascinating thing. That's actually very, very much a Pennsylvania thing. We have these voles, basically short tail mice that are going to be running around. So St. Gertrude was invoked to get rid of these. And what people would typically do is they would walk around the perimeter of their garden. And this is well documented in a couple different sources. You walk the perimeter of your garden on March 17th. There's also a little bit of a rhyme that goes along with some of this as well. And there's a particular baked good that was made as well. Doug, you have a picture of the baked good up. Do you want to put that up? Because that's kind of the first step in this. And I'll make sure that I have my images then to follow. Now, the interesting thing with St. Gertrude is that there is a special baked good associated with her among the Pennsylvania Dutch. It's called St. Gertrude's Dutch. Now, this was recently featured in a book called Dutch Treats, Heirloom Recipes for Farmhouse Kitchens, written by William Woys Weaver. Here you can see this classic. This is a hearth-baked bread. You could do it in a wood stove or even a conventional oven, but the main thing was it was cooked inside of a cast iron pot that had a lid on top of it, so it could be done right on the hearth. And this is basically a Lenten bread because it's not going to be light and fluffy and sugary and sweet. This is something that's going to be a little bit thick. It's going to be a little bit more austere for the time of year. The belief was you baked this on St. Gertrude's Day, and then you would take some of the crumbs that were left over and you would sprinkle them in the four corners of the garden as you made a circuit and walked around. And this would keep your garden free of rats or mice or vermin or even other types of pests as well. And I have a rhyme that goes along with this as well. And I will see what I can do to share this as well. Doug, I'm going to pull this up. Yeah, we're going to pull this up. And here we go. Can you guys see that?
Not yet, but now they can.
Not yet. Now they can. Oh, fantastic. All righty. Well, I just want to make sure we can go over this because this is an interesting piece here. Now, St. Gertrude's Day, and I'm actually showing the English first, and I made that mistake there with this screen share. I'm going to go back one. In Pennsylvania Dutch, one would say this while making the rounds through the corners of the garden. They would say, Epis Grina, Epis Schwarze, Epis Weisse for ihre Katze. Bachtma Dutch Drudistag, Strei die Grimle wo sie mag, vom Eck zu Eck am Gorderan, so wachse die Kreide auf dem Land. And it rhymes. It has a cadence to it. This is a ritual that you are to perform. And the translation is something green, something black, something white for her cat. Bake Dutch on St. Gertrude Gertrude's Day, scatter the crumbs where she directs, from corner to corner along the garden's edge, so that your plants will thrive upon the land. And here's a little bit of an image of St. Gertrude as well. You can see she's got her staff. She's being crawled on by a bunch of rats that she's going to dispel from the garden. And in the background there, you can also see someone with a handful of breadcrumbs getting ready. Now, this is a fascinating tradition, not one that's overly well documented, but the grandmother of John Joseph Stout was the woman who helped to record this. And, you know, John Joseph Stout was such an important scholar documenting the folk art and the traditions and the rituals of the Pennsylvania Dutch in a spiritual sense. He was very, very interested in the crossover between the folk art and the theology of the Pennsylvania Dutch, well respected for that. So this is a fascinating tradition. Not a lot of people know who St. Gertrude was or what she was responsible for. I would argue that among the Pennsylvania Dutch, most people don't remember much about her biography, but they remember that she is the one you appeal to take care of your garden.
So that's today, people. If you don't have a Dutch baked, which probably most of you don't at hand, well, you better get baking, or I'm going to allow you to cheat, take a piece of sliced bread, crumple it up, and just walk out to your garden real quick and throw them in the corners. And for this year, we'll let that fly, but be ready for next year, March 17th. Mark it on your calendars.
Absolutely.
So that's today, of course, but towards the end of this month, we move out of Lent and into Holy Week. What can we talk about in regards to the traditions around the days, particularly the important holy days? Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Saturday, Easter Sunday. What do you want to tell us about that, Patrick?
Well, and I'll even add another one to that. Palmazondag. You got to put Palm Sunday in there too. So
of course.
That's a day that kicks it all off. So
right.
Of course, this is the time that I think, especially for the Pennsylvania Dutch, many of whom were people of faith, this was a time where there was stuff going on in the church. Many times people were stripping the altars. Oftentimes there were things happening in the sanctuary that wouldn't ordinarily happen. People would get palm branches in the Palm Sunday services. There were all kinds of different things that were happening. It was a time of year when the liturgy got really colorful. And I'll say colorful at the same time, it kind of got dreary with the music too. A lot of the Lenten hymns are these dirges, but I'll argue there's something so introspective about this time of year. And that introspection is such an important key to understanding some of the traditions that are going to follow. Now, I want to do a quick screen share again, just to show you this little vignette I put together that deals with this notion of the traditions of this time of year. And it's the customs of Holy Week that I'm showing represented here for a number of different purposes. On one hand, you've got your palm crosses that are made many times on Palm Sunday in church. While you're supposed to be paying attention to the sermon, most of the times as kids, I remember we would get these and we would sit and make crosses out of them or other things. And this is an important thing because I knew my great-grandparents, all kinds of folks will keep these throughout the year. And they'll do this because this is actually, in their mind, this is a protection. You keep them in your car, you put them in your home somewhere. There's lots of different ways that people use these palm crosses. So this is an important thing. I'll also say Maundy Thursday rolls around, and what do we call it, Doug? In Pennsylvania.
Green Donnerstag.
Exactly. Green Donnerstag or Green Donnerstag or Green Donnerstag. Everybody says it a little differently depending on what county you're in and how you pronounce it. But the interesting thing is this comes back from this word originally to groan. Groene is the word. But over time, it took on this idea of being related to the word green, which is when you're supposed to be out gathering your dandelions or the first greens of the year. The belief was that if you did not do this, you would not be taking full advantage of the fact that things are beginning to open up. This is believed to be a foreshadowing of the miraculous transformation that takes place on Easter. So for people of faith, they believe that the earth itself is actually foreshadowing this transformation that takes place. And this is not just something that was thought to happen in a biblical past, but something that was believed to be imminent and happening now. And I have to say that this is the way that The Pennsylvania Dutch traditions are affected at Christmas, at Easter, at Pentecost, all these different times. You're going to find that there was this perception that the biblical stories are not just something happening in a far off place, but happening at the same time that we're celebrating them. And we're really getting into those narratives. So when you talk about the Passover that Christ celebrated, according to biblical stories, he celebrated the Passover. One of the things that they were going to be eating was bitter greens. Some people will say that this has something to do with the greens that we consume on Good Friday. There are other people who say that is, an anachronism. Many people believe that's the case. So regardless of whether it's an anachronism, we don't know. But you're supposed to gather those greens because the belief is if you don't gather those greens and eat them, you're not taking full advantage of this spring tonic that's supposed to purify your blood. And people will say it'll make you lousy. And the idea was that not only would you be scratching from the lice, but the idea was people would also use this word faula in order to describe it, that it would make you lazy. You wouldn't get into the year. You would end up getting kind of stir crazy with that oncoming spring and just not be effective. So you always have to look at these things, that there's colorful aspects of the tradition, but the practicality is, what does it hurt to eat this delicious dandelion salad that you're going to prepare with hot bacon dressing? If the belief was it was going to make you more effective at your farm work, you better go and do it. Because if it doesn't work, at least it doesn't hurt you. Botsnicks, shotsnicks, right? There you go. Now, the other thing I want to point out in this picture, if I can just keep going with it for a second.
Absolutely.
You've got these eggs in here. And a lot of people are like, well, those don't look like colorful Easter eggs. What's going on there? These are the Good Friday eggs. Now, Good Friday eggs are the eggs that you gather on Good Friday. Now, typically, Pennsylvania Dutch people were going to church on Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, depending on what congregations you're in. And both of those days, you weren't supposed to work at all. The only thing you could really do on that Maundy Thursday is pick greens, but you weren't supposed to do much of anything on Good Friday, except, of course, milk the cows, because the cows they'll get rammy if you don't, because you have to milk the cows. So there's like the stuff you have to do and then the stuff that's optional. If it's optional, you better skip it. But the one thing you're supposed to do on Good Friday is go out and get those eggs. You're supposed to get those eggs and bring them into the house, and you mark one of them. You put the year on it. Some people will put other religious inscriptions. They'll put a crown of thorns on it. They'll write INRI. They'll take that egg and they'll put it under a crock in the attic. And that's where no mouse or any other creature can get to it. And it sits there all year long. Now, the belief was that if you kept that in your house would be free from sickness and free from fires and storms. So the lightning wouldn't strike your house. The plague wouldn't come in and get you. So this is one of those things that for those of you who are looking for just a little bit of an added bonus during these uncertain times, and if you have chickens, of course, go get those eggs and bring one inside. I have friends who live up the way who have chickens who have given me an egg almost every year, and it's been a wonderful thing to get. And I oftentimes will do some form of a little inscription. In fact, I have 2018 in a drawer right behind me, but I'll wait until a later time to get that out. We don't want to get it out right now.
Well, I would say two things about some of the stuff you've already talked about. And I know that there are people out there that are going to echo this. I mean, to be honest, dandelion itself is very bitter, of course. But the way we hide that bitterness with hot bacon dressing, which is, I'll tell you what, hot bacon dressing is tough to beat when it's done right. And it is one of my favorite tastes, to be honest. That sourness, but also that little bit of salt and the richness of the egg yolk that's in there. I know the people are out there are going to be like, I don't like the dandelion, but I love the dressing. And, I know Pennsylvania Dutch that'll eat that on potatoes, or, if you really don't want the dandelion. But I can also speak personally to what Patrick talked about, that, dandelion greens are, I think they have to be one of the healthiest greens that are out there. They're really high in nitrogen, and they are that spring tonic. Listen, personal moment real quick. A couple years ago, I made a big bowl of dandelion greens on Maundy Thursday, and I was expecting 2 more people to show up for dinner that night that never showed up. Long story short, there were all these dandelions, and I made fresh hot bacon dressing, and I figured, well, we can't let this go to waste. So I ate it all. And I didn't sleep much that night because the dandelion works. It will clean you out. Let's just say that. But in small doses, in a normal portion size, not the portion size I had that night, it is one of my favorite things. It's it's one of the first fresh things you get in spring. Especially nowadays it's different. You can go to the grocery store and get fresh lettuce anytime, but that ability to go out in your backyard, because as you know, dandelion grows anywhere. hunt it and clean it, pick it and clean it. It's such a rewarding meal because you've done that work. The earth has given you something that you didn't even have to plant. The earth provided for you, and we have this beautiful dressing that we make. It's I love it. It's one of my favorite things. It truly is. And the other thing that you talked about, not working, one thing, and we were, as I've mentioned before on my channel, that, my family, I grew up practicing Lutheran, and we were religiously, we were pretty strongly religious, let's say that, very faithful, went to church and engaged in our church community. But there was one thing that my father definitely, and my grandparents always said too, and I don't know if this is something you've seen, I'm sure you have, Patrick, but we were farmers. We always had vegetable gardens, and we never worked the ground between Maundy Thursday and Easter. Now, what the original reason was, I don't know, but what my grandfather would say, and maybe this is something he learned from his parents or his his grandparents, was that he said, we can't work the ground from Friday to Sunday. Jesus was in the ground. We don't disturb the ground. After Easter, we'll have at it. But for that time period, you did not work the ground. And really, in my childhood, thinking back, that was probably the only 3 days that we didn't do something in the ground year round. And they really, they took that was one that my family really practiced religiously every year. It's talking to some of these old traditions. And today, whether it's superstition or my faith or whatever it is, that's one that I hold to still today. I don't touch my garden either between Good Friday and Easter. But I'm stealing the show here, Patrick. Keep talking, brother.
No worries. And, I just want to follow up with that. And I kind of alluded to this before. You can't understate the role in the past for previous generations of Pennsylvania Dutch people and for people today yet, this notion of the sacred and secular calendar overlapping as this constant, ever present. It's like a blanket that's draped over all of existence. And it is in and through the things that people do. The way that a biblical story would even instruct a person, not to till the ground or do anything like that. Of course, this whole, metaphor of Christ coming out of the tomb, opening up the bonds of hell, which is what was believed to happen on Holy Saturday, and then really concluding, of course, on Easter. These are poignant metaphors to people, and it's a fascinating thing. Now, I have a question for you, Doug. Have you ever heard of anything associated with Holy Saturday?
Other than having lighting a fire is one tradition that I'm aware of, that we, the church that I currently go to, which is a Lutheran church here in central Pennsylvania, we, in a normal year, I don't think we're doing it this year, but we do have an Easter Vigil fire. Beyond that, that's really the only tradition that off the top of my head that I know personally for Holy Saturday. What else is out there, Patrick?
Well, I got this horseshoe here. Now, the belief was at one point in time among the Pennsylvania Dutch is that if you find something in the street, you shouldn't pick it up. They would say, is this vielleicht gebraucht damit? So that would mean someone may have left that in the street because they used it to get rid of an illness. And if you pick it up, you might get their illness. So you didn't touch stuff that was laying around. Like, even if it looked slightly desirable, it might be even if it was slightly desirable, it might be even more, something you don't want to touch. Yeah. But on Holy Saturday, this is an old European tradition that's trickled into Pennsylvania. This was the time when you could pick something up from the ground and not have to worry about it affecting you in the slightest bit. And that was the time when if you found a horseshoe on Holy Saturday, it was considered to be very, very important. Now, the only reason I can say that this is all part of this metaphor is because the belief is, and this is mentioned in some of the creeds, but it's also one of those things that's mentioned not so much directly in biblical literature, but indirectly. They talk about what Christ was doing when he was in the tomb. The belief was that Christ went down to preach a sermon to the patriarchs, basically the idea that all humanity up until that point in time had been kept in this underworld and that Christ let them all out. And so that whole idea of unleashing is part of that process. And it's a fascinating thing. The old term people used to say was harrowing of hell. The harrowing of hell was what took place, because some people look at that as having been, the underworld. So it's an interesting tradition as well. And I thought I would pull that one out because I realized I had this horseshoe hanging behind me, and I just pulled it. I only really just thought about it now. But I'll also say too, some friends of mine who did the Good Friday tradition with the eggs, they would eat it
Mhm.
too. They would make sure to
Oh,
put,
okay.
they would make sure to put, they would take one of those eggs that they would put aside. The other, they would actually take that and they put it into an omelet that could be eaten. And some people would take an egg from uh, um, from Good Friday, from Holy Saturday, and from Easter morning, and they would take those and they would consume them in an omelet on the morning of Easter because the belief was they would get all the goods from all those days in one. So it's a fascinating thing.
Patrick, I got a
Oh,
question for you. And I don't know if this is, I don't know how Pennsylvania Dutch this is, but Chris wants to know horseshoe upside down or right side up over the door and why?
there's several different ways of looking at it. And in fact, if you consult European sources, there's more than two ways to do it. Some people will put them this way, facing in or out of a door. The perception was that some folks, oh, wonderful, greetings from Switzerland. You'll find in a lot of German speaking areas that they go this way. In parts of Italy, they go this way as well. When you get into the British Isles, it's almost always this way. Now, there's several different ways of looking at it. Some people look at this as it's a symbol of a vessel. And if it goes up, that means it can hold something. And the belief was it would hold good luck, good fortune, all those things, that it was a blessing. And there's a difference in terms of how people regard something, when something is a blessing or whether something is protective. And sometimes they're one and the same, but there can be some different ways that you think about it. This was thought of instead as being binding. And so the prongs of the horseshoe are down because they are to bind anything that's negative and keep it away, to ward things off. This tradition is informed by many different aspects of previous human practices. But I also point out a lot of folks didn't know that you used to put horseshoes on the door to honor Saint Leonard, who was the patron saint of horses and of livestock. So you'll find a lot of these traditions date back to Roman Catholic practices that are no longer important to many people today, except in a historical sense. Among the Pennsylvania Dutch, you wouldn't even know this because only 1% of Pennsylvania Dutch people were originally Catholic.
Yeah.
You'll find even with the Good Friday eggs, at one point in time, eggs used to be taken to church to be blessed and distributed in certain portions of the liturgy. There are ways in the Roman Catholic liturgy for blessing of salt, for blessing of chalk, for blessing of candles, and for blessing of eggs. These are all things that are used in ritual practices. You use the chalk on Epiphany to write a blessing above your door. Use the eggs, typically between Good Friday and Easter. They were sometimes delivered to the poor. Now, I'll tell you, this is a sign of kind of the austerity of the times. In the Middle Ages, when you received an egg that might have been given and distributed to the poor, are you going to eat it? Or are you going to sack that away because it's been blessed on the altar? And this is where this tradition comes from. So this is from a time when these were distributed for people to have something to eat, but they thought they were so eminently sacred that they kept them. It's a fascinating thing.
Well, I think we have to take a minute, and since we're talking about eggs, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't know the connection between the Pennsylvania Dutch and the American tradition of the Easter Bunny and eggs and so forth.
Absolutely.
And I think we absolutely have to talk about that. So, if you're out there and you didn't know that there's a big connection here, you're about to find out. Patrick?
Well, this is an interesting thing. So there are a number of different holidays that we have in the United States that were very much influenced by German-speaking immigrants. Now, the one thing I want to say is that for both Christmas and for Easter, you're going to find that some of the earliest manifestations of these holidays were among Pennsylvanians, and especially Pennsylvania German speakers. So this is an interesting thing, but I also need to temper that by stating that Pennsylvania was not the only place that those immigrants went. So they went into the other colonies and other parts of the United States as well. And I also want to point out that in the 19th century, there were lots of German-speaking immigrants who came, who brought almost identical traditions, but different along. So like the pickle on the Christmas tree, that's a German-American thing. Late 19th century, early 20th century, that was not a Pennsylvania Dutch thing. So you're going to find that these traditions came in phases, and then you're going to have also especially traditions associated with the Eastern European cultures as well. And they are quite diverse. Whether you're talking about the Ukrainians or the Lithuanians, they all brought different traditions with them. Some are rooted in the Orthodox faith. Some are rooted in basically in Eastern Roman Catholicism. So you really find quite a bit of this. And this is also true with Easter eggs. You find Easter eggs among the Pennsylvania Dutch. There are 1700s, pre-revolutionary eggs that are still out there. It's amazing that people had scratch. They would typically dye these with with natural dyes. They would use onion skins to dye them red. You have to add a little bit of vinegar because there's a chemical reaction that takes place with the shell of the egg, and it bonds that pigment from the vegetable into the shell of the egg. It makes these beautiful lustrous colors, and you can take a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of lard or something, put it on your hands, and rub them over those eggs after you're done with them. It makes them shine. They look polished. You take some form of a sharp instrument, either a pocket knife or a needle, and you would scratch into them. And this is the earliest form of Easter egg decoration that you're going to find in Pennsylvania. There are ones that are from the 1770s that are out there. I mean, it's just fascinating. But there's one of those is in the Ursinus collection that was formerly the Pennsylvania Folklife Society collection of Alfred Shoemaker, Don Yoder, and J. William Fry, the founders of the Kutztown Folk Festival. So it's a fascinating thing that these eggs have stuck around so long. We have an egg at the Heritage Center from the 1850s, but there are eggs from the 1830s out there. It's amazing. So these have lasted a long time. Now, these techniques that we have, though, are different than the techniques you're going to find by some of the later immigrants who were going to be using, some cases, commercial dyes, in some cases, natural dyes, but especially the Eastern European, Ukrainian traditions, especially, they would use wax resist for their dyes. So they would go over the whole egg, make it design, and then they would mask it off with wax and then dye it. And they would gradually mask in order to be able to create these various color layers, and they're interlocked. So you'd put a layer of color on, and then you would mask it over top of that so that each subsequent color dye wouldn't affect it. And it's a beautiful thing. I have a picture here that I would like to share, if I can, of some Pennsylvania
Absolutely.
Easter eggs. And these are, oh, and go figure, it's not even showing up. Well, nah, it doesn't look like I'm going to be sharing it. Well, anyway, well, anyway, it's weird because I got it right here with me. Let me try this one more time because there's some pretty eggs in there. Let's see what we got. Huh, weird. Yeah, well, it didn't show up. So I guess I can't share it, but I'm going to cancel. Anyway, some of the ones I was going to showed these different colors you get because you can use red cabbage to make green. Go figure, but you have to let it oxidize. And that'll work as a hot water dye or a cold water dye. You can use blueberries to make blue. Believe it or not, blueberries and vinegar will work. Beets, for instance, but they should be raw beets. Don't use canned beets. There's too much sugar in it, and it's actually going to start to, it won't work the way you think it will. You got to be really careful about it. Now, if you cook the beets that are in a can and then put them in the vinegar, it'll actually work. But anyway, I learned this from experimenting. But the funny thing, too, you're going to find is that among the Pennsylvania Dutch, some of the earliest images of these eggs that are out there are made by different schoolmaster fraktur artists who showed images of the eggs being delivered by a very special character that many of us still familiar with today, and that is the Oosterhaas, the Easter rabbit. And the Easter rabbit was the earliest depictions of this were from around 1810, 1811 in that time period by a Schuylkill County schoolmaster from Brunswick Township who was at the Red Church just near Orwigsburg. That's where he's buried today, and his name was Conrad Gilbert. And we have a house blessing that was done by Conrad Gilbert at the Heritage Center. And it's a beautiful house blessing, and it was meant to be read aloud at special times of the year, such as Easter. And the one that we have was inscribed for a man by the name of Adam Schmidt. Perfect. Thank you for pulling that up because I just couldn't get the screen share to work. Here is one of the Easter rabbits. There are two known examples of the Easter rabbit by Conrad Gilbert, and you can see the Easter rabbit basically has this basque that's like a shoulder strap going across, that he is hauling this bag of eggs that he's going to deliver to the kids. And a lot of times what people would do is they would put something out. They would put a hat with a little bit of straw in it, and the Easter rabbit would leave an egg behind. Not unlike what people used to do around Christmas time to leave cookies for the mule, or they would for the Christkindl. The belief was originally that the Christ child would come. He would be accompanied by a mule. Of course, people would also leave cookies out for the Belschnickel, and I can tell you from experience, the Belschnickel really appreciates those cookies when he gets them. But the Easter rabbit would leave them in the night as well. And this meant that you couldn't wait until Easter to dye your eggs. People started dyeing eggs like crazy on Holy Saturday, because you had to have them ready for Easter. Because on Easter, you were going to be so caught up with going to church and all those other things, and you're even going to find that just like Christmas has second Christmas on the following Monday, some people observe the same thing where they would do special activities on Easter Monday, and that's where you would find, of course, the origination of the selection of the date for the Burks for Somling.
Yeah.
It's always the Monday after Easter, and this is one of the events that is not taking place this year. So we're going to miss all of our dear friends who attend the Burks for Somling, because that's not just people from Berks, that's people from Lebanon, Schuylkill County, people from Northampton, people from Montgomery, Lancaster, all over southeastern PA come out to one of the largest dialect events. And that's just in many ways shows the significance that people used to put on that Easter Monday, which was a day when you could just continue those festivities. And there's a lot of things people did on Easter that were pretty interesting too. Let me tell you, egg eating contests and egg picking. Have you ever heard of egg picking?
Egg picking? Maybe, but I don't know if I called it that. Yeah, tell us,
Well,
Patrick.
Alfred Shoemaker did a lot of writing about this, and so did Don Yoder. You would dye an egg, or you didn't even have to be dyed. You didn't want to make it too fancy because chances are it was going to break. What you did was people developed a technique for this where you would take your egg and someone else would take their egg and you would knock them together.
Oh,
And the one that broke, you could eat it, but then you would also owe that person the egg. So they could have to give you another egg, and you would get eggs this way. And this was part of the way that people would just go around and they would challenge each other, and members of the family would do it. Now, remember, it doesn't sound like it would be as fun when you've got maybe only like 2 kids and there's only 2 kids going back and forth with this egg picking business. Imagine a family that had 8 children. That wouldn't have been very common. It wouldn't have been uncommon in the past.
Uncommon, yeah.
It would be very uncommon today, but it wouldn't have been uncommon for the past. So think about that. You get together with your neighbors and the whole Freundschaft on Easter, going out doing things. And these egg eating contests, sometimes people were eating several dozen eggs just to prove their yeah, well, anyway, they're how static they are, it's intense to think about that. So it's a lot going on.
Chris wonders what would happen if the Belschnickel ever met the Easter Bunny. I think they'd partner up and fight crime. That's what I think they would do.
I like what you said better. I was going to say I'm not sure which one would make it out alive.
Oh man, that is Patrick, it's such, there's all these things that we could talk and talk and talk, but this idea, these traditions are ancient in some aspects, older than the hills, but yet they are still alive. I know there are people out there, of course, that are still coloring eggs. And I remember my grandmother, when I was a kid, we colored our eggs with onion skins. That's how I learned how to do it. And that we usually did that in my family on either Good Friday or Saturday, Easter Saturday, depending, because parents working and all that stuff. But what they did before that, I don't know. But when I was a kid, it was usually the Easter Saturday. And that's also when you would go to the community egg hunt too, that our small town would have every year for the kids. We got people joining us from Virginia that can speak Pennsylvania Dutch.
Wonderful. Doug, may I show you something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, hopefully you can see it, but this is an example of one of the ones I did last year. It's one of the only ones that survived because my daughter turned 4 this year, but last year she and I did a bunch of egg dyeing, and I did some natural dyes, but I had her color on them with white crayons. This one is a scratched egg that I did, and it's the only one that survived because I did a whole bunch of them with barn star designs and flowers. She wanted to eat them all. Now, I pulled them all out at one point, and I said, we got to get rid of some of these eggs. Now, which ones do you want to eat? And she's like, that one. And she wants to eat the one that was the most elaborate. So it's fascinating. And I'll
just
show
out
you
of curiosity,
something else.
Patrick, that egg that you just showed, for anyone that's really interested, what did you use to etch that on? Did you use a needle or a knife? I know you mentioned some things, but personally, how did you make that egg?
I wish I had it here. In fact, it might be here. I'm actually on my art table right now up here. And I don't see it. I have a little stylus. I have a little
Oh, okay.
stylus. It's a needlepoint stylus. You got to be really careful because you can poke through the egg with it. Otherwise, you can use like a razor blade like this. If you use one of these, this works really well because you can just kind of hold it pretty easily, cradle the egg in your hand, and do the scratching. But I also, I've also done some where I do some egg techniques that are painted too. One person that did a lot of these was Peter Fritsch,
Oh, yeah.
the revered poet who really expressed the spirit of the Pennsylvania Dutch, late 20th century, and passed away in 2015. But he did a lot of eggs, and we have a bunch of his at the Heritage Center, painted, beautiful, with bird trees and everything. But
Yeah.
here are two of the Good Friday eggs I did. Now this one here is from 2020. And this one here is from, I think, 2018. So these are the ones I kept in the house to keep the house from burning down.
And is that just, did you use like, is it a black marker or what did you use to
Uh,
to color those?
I used India ink.
Okay.
And you can see it's got the INRI, the crown of thorns. These are motifs directly coming from the biblical narratives, the inscription from the cross of Christ, and then the three crosses, which is thought to be a blessing. So
They're beautiful. They're beautiful. A lot different than the stuff you buy at the grocery store with those wrap-on plastic coverings that you could just dump the eggs in like warm water or something, and it like shrink wraps to them. Oh,
yeah, it's funny, but I'll tell you what, people used to do funny things with eggs too. Pennsylvania Dutch people used to take pantyhose. Have you ever heard about this?
possibly keep
Oh,
going.
you would dye the eggs with pantyhose because the pantyhose would let the it would let the dyes in for the onion skins. But you could take leaves or other little flexible flora and put them on the egg lightly, and then put them in pantyhose and tie it shut. And you would put them in the egg bath or in the dye bath, and you'd boil the eggs in it, and you could then pull them out, and that leaf would get stuck on the surface with the pantyhose. There are tricks to doing all this stuff, and it's absolutely fascinating to watch them. But I always wonder, well, what did they use before they used pantyhose? I mean, so you never know. This is just why you got to save that pantyhose, even if you got holes in it. You got something to do with it. Save that pantyhose for Easter.
Absolutely. We are not a throwaway culture, Patrick. We
No,
are
not
not
at
a
all.
throwaway culture. Well, Patrick, we've been talking a long time. My goodness. Is there any last thing maybe that we didn't talk about that you wouldn't mind just throwing out at people? No
Oh,
one's really asking any questions. Everybody's telling us where they're coming from, and that's great. We got people from Germany and France and Switzerland and the United States joining us, and I want to say just shout out to everybody watching us. But we've been talking about Holy Week traditions among the Pennsylvania Dutch. Patrick has shown us some of his beautiful art for the eggs that he has personally done himself, and these are all traditions that you can learn a lot more about if you go out there and look in the right places. But is there any one last tradition, or maybe your favorite tradition,
oh
Patrick,
my.
associated with this time of the year?
Oh my. Oh, well, I mean, one, I think I wouldn't call this my favorite per se, because it's so hard to choose.
Sure.
They're all really fascinating. But one thing is that people used to save the rainwater on Good Friday. They used to always say that it would always rain on Good Friday. And even if it just rained a little bit, but people would actually put a bowl outside. Oh, someone just said before pantyhose was invented, you could use cheesecloth. Oh, someone's
There you
using their head. Of course, that makes
Dr.
perfect
O.
sense. Exactly. Well, I'll just throw this out. We have some gathered rainwater that was given to us, donated to us at the Heritage Center, from a woman who lived originally up in Schuylkill County. Her nephew donated it to us, and it was saved. It would be saved every Good Friday, and they would save this rainwater because they would actually take it to church, and they took it to Huff's Church for their
Uh-huh.
children and grandchildren to get baptized with. The minister would let
Oh
them
my
use the
goodness.
rainwater. So it's amazing. And we have some quart mason jars and also some half-gallon mason jars at the center that are full of this rainwater. And it's just a wonderful thing. So I wouldn't call that my favorite, but it's just one I didn't mention. Now, if you
Well,
want to learn more about these, you can hear more about it at Easter on the Farm on Saturday, the 27th. The first presentation starts at 10 o'clock, but it runs through 4 o'clock. The 10 o'clock presentation is going to be the one that deals with all of these different traditions, especially the traditions of the home. I'm not going to go crazy going through all the religious connotations of it, but I really want to especially focus on those things that people brought into the home, because these are the things that we can continue in the present day. And that's more than anything what we do at the Heritage Center is we teach people about regional traditions that people can then take, and they can find meaning in daily life with those. They can add a cultural sense of meaning to what they do. They can pass it on to their kids. You can revive these old traditions in the spirit of the culture and have a lot of fun with them. So that's really what we're doing.
Patrick, I mean, you know how I feel about this, but the cult, for those of you out there, the Cultural Heritage Center at Kutztown University, Pennsylvania German Cultural Heritage Center at Kutztown University is doing this stuff. They are doing the work to ensure that these traditions are being passed on or just recorded. You know, some of these things might fall out of practice as we become a more secular country and a more secular society. A lot of these old religious traditions might go by the wayside, but we have a record of it. I can't get the imagery and the power out of that being baptized with Good Friday rainwater. That for me personally, that one really is powerful.
Well, think about the Christmas dew. Think about the Christmas dew. People did that on Christmas Eve. They would put a bowl outside, and the dew that would gather in it, you would make sure that everybody in the house got a little bit of it. It has to do with this idea that the whole cosmos was thought to be eminently sacred on these special days. And like the stars were aligning, that gave us just this opportunity to look at things a little more closely. And what a beautiful opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, you know, he's told us a wonderful evening full of tons of information. I mean, you can't get this stuff anywhere, and I gave it to you for free. Do not bet on, man. You just can't beat that. But there's a lot more that you can learn if you tune in next Saturday on the Facebook page for the Pennsylvania German Cultural Heritage Center, 10 till 4, correct,
10
Patrick?
till 4.
10 till 4. Various speakers. There's going to be food demonstrations. There's going to be art. There's going to be these Eastertide traditions as well. And again, it'll be interactive to a certain extent through Facebook. So please take some time next Saturday. And if you can't, the beauty of what we're doing now is this live stream will be archived. You can check it out whenever. And what's happening on Pennsylvania on Easter on the Farm in 2 weeks will also be housed right there on their Facebook page. So if you have to work on that Saturday, at some point when you're not working, you can go back to that, scroll to that day, and all of those posts will be there, and you can watch those videos and, you know, see what you missed. So I mean, the world's your oyster, people out there. If you want to learn more about Pennsylvania Dutch culture, we're throwing it at you. Hopefully you're enjoying this stuff and you can use it and pass some small traditions on to your family. Patrick, as always, it has been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you on. Your wealth of knowledge is, I believe, inexhaustible. I'm going to say that. And it is, thank you so much for sharing all that you've learned and sharing the gifts that you have. You know, it's so easy for someone to pick up a piece of that egg and just say, oh, you know, look at this egg. But to think about the time that you put into that, the gift of what you did to do to that egg, and then the whole story behind why, you know, it just, thank you so much for sharing that with the audience tonight. And like I said, you can learn a heck of a lot more from Patrick in next Saturday on the 27th. So join him and all of his friends that are going to be there on Pennsylvania German Easter on the Farm by the Pennsylvania German Cultural Heritage Center. Patrick, any last words for the crew before you exit stage right?
Oh, exit. Is that a pun?
Maybe.
Well, Doug, I just want to say thank you. Es war ein großes Pläsier für du zu sein mit dir und groß Dank für mich habe. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. I always learn from you, and I think your knowledge base of the language is just such a wonderful gift to all of us. So I appreciate you sharing as well. And I always enjoy these conversations because we meet in the middle and we have a great time. Yeah. And it's lovely to hear from all these wonderful people too, who are sharing their memories and making sure too that we're making sure we got it right. Because that's also one of the things about us Dutchies is that we may not always get it right, but there's always someone there to tell us.
That'll make sure that we know that we didn't, right?
I love it. I love it. So thank you everybody for your wonderful questions and comments tonight too. Yeah. So thank you, Doug.
We will have Patrick on again, don't worry, in the future for another PA Dutch Live. But Patrick, till next time, real quick, this question from Federberg Laboratories. Easter on the Farm will only be streamed on Facebook, correct?
So it'll only be streamed on Facebook. but it'll be available on YouTube basically the week after. And you technically don't need to actually have a Facebook login in order to see these videos because they are public. So you should be able to find them. I've had some folks who've told me it's been more difficult, but you should be able to find them. So just want to make sure you all have some instructions, and check out our website as well. It's www.kutztown.edu/pgchc. We're putting a lot more content up, and by the end of this spring, we're going to have a lot of virtual content that's going to be shared too.
And I will share that link in the comment section of the YouTube video down below after this uploads, so that anyone can just click on the link to access the Pennsylvania German Cultural Heritage Center. Bruder, I wish you and your family a very blessed Eastertide and all of whatever traditions you and your family celebrate. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will be talking with you in the very near future again. Patrick, thanks so much for coming on. Take care of yourself until we schwätz wieder, okay?
Yep. Mach's gut, schaff nicht zu hart.
Ja, ich
Sport
du
ein
nicht.
Geld.
Jo, sell muss ich do. All right, mach's gut, Patrick.
All right.
Everyone, how wonderful was that? How wonderful was that? I learned something. I got to think of some memories that I had forgotten about, traditions that I share with my family. Hopefully, Patrick gave you some ideas of things that you can now do with your family. Or maybe we just brought back memories in your memory bank of time that you spent with your parents or your grandparents on that Pennsylvania Dutch farm or wherever you spent your childhood, whether it was dyeing Easter eggs with onion skins or, eating dandelion greens with hot bacon dressing. I'm glad to be able to bring you those memories and also to teach you about these traditions and cultures that our culture is so rich in. If it's close to midnight where you are over in Europe and you need to head out and head to bed, I wish you all a good night. I'm going to stick around a couple more minutes because I did promise that I would do a Pennsylvania Dutch poem and a monthly Pennsylvania Dutch song. So if you're up for it, I'm going to stick around and do those two things before I say goodbye to everybody. But we got tons of people making great comments. Thanks so much for following along and commenting. So let's go to our poem that I chose for this month, and that is right here. So hopefully you can see that. I found this poem attributed to Elfrida Weaver, and it's an Eastertide poem called Easter Time. So the Pennsylvania Dutch is there on the left, and the English translation is on the right. Like I did last month, I'll read the Pennsylvania Dutch, and you can either follow along with the Pennsylvania Dutch, or you can just read on the right-hand side the English as I'm reading. Here we go. Die Eastertide by Elfrida Weaver. Die Eastertide ist wieder da, mit ihrer schönen Gabe. Die Auferstehung von unserem Herrn, tut Leib und Seele labe. Die Blume schluppe aus dem Grund, nach ihrem langen Schlaf. Die Vögel fliegen wieder rum, im Schwamm, dort weide die Schaf. Palmsonntag ist die Nachtmahlzeit und Freitag obends just davor. Wann's Wetter recht schön ist, war's voll wie alle Jahr. Schön wie ein Traum ist die Natur, sie blüht, tragt Frucht, geht tot. As ma sell aber net du misse, ging Christus dadurch sein Not. Ja, ist auferstanden und die schöne Frühjahrszeit gemahnt uns an unser Herr Jesus und was gedu für alle Leib. So a real nice Eastertide poem with a lot of religious undertones and aspects by the one and only Elfrida Weaver. Well, my Damo and Harn, Mon Slide on Vibe Slide, I got one more thing I want to share with you guys before I take my exit stage right. And that is, of course, a song of the month for us, and it is Easter time, and there's a lot of songs out there that deal with spring and Easter, and I was deciding, do I want to do a religious song? Do I want to do a secular song? Do I want to sing about my Easter bonnet? Do I want to sing about here comes Peter Cottontail? But I decided, nope, I am a practicing Lutheran. There are tons of great hymns that come out of this time, this time in the church year. So I translated a song that a lot of you, if you are practicing Christians, probably know, and that is In the Cross, Jesus, keep me close. So I translated this into Pennsylvania Dutch. I'm going to sing it for you, and then we'll talk about what's coming up. and then we'll probably say mock screw to each other. But give me a second to get this bad boy out here. And this month, I will be accompanied on my Deering 5-string banjo. So she's in tune, and if she isn't in tune, then I'll sing out of tune with her. Let's say that. So here is Jesus Keep Me Near the Cross, and you can follow along and sing along if you know the melody, of course. It's right there on your screen. So here we go. Jesus, halt mich beim Kreuz, dort ein kirchlicher Quell, frei zu allen heilig Strom, fließt von Calvary's Barrik. In dem Kreuz sei die Herrlichkeit, bis my sail soul thinner, ruh über der Rewe. Bei em Kreuz en sirret Sail, lieb Genot hen mich gefunden, da den Hell und Maria stand, scheint sei Strolle mich. In dem Kreuz sei die Herrlichkeit, bis my sail soul thinner, ruh ever der Rewe. Bei em Kreuz, o Lamm von Gott, bring sei Bilder vor mich. Helf mir Lauf von Tag zu Tag, mit sei Schade über. In dem Kreuz sei die Herrlichkeit, bis my sail soul thinner, ruh über der Rewe. Bei em Kreuz ward ich hoff vertraue sei Leben, bis ich recht die goldene Strand just über der Rewe. In dem Kreuz sei die Herrlichkeit, bis my sail soul thinner, ruh über der Rewe. Hey, well, there we go. Another song this month for all of you in this weird time that we live in. Some of us that are people of faith have not really been able to go to church for a year, or we've been virtually having church. And I know that many of us that are practicing Christians have had a hard time missing out on all that and being able to sing with other people and being able to hug other people and shake other people's hands and just be in the company of other people. I'm hoping that this live stream can provide a little bit of entertainment for you every month, and also an opportunity to connect with other people who are fans of Pennsylvania Dutch, people that are Pennsylvania Dutch, people that just like learning about us Pennsylvania Dutch, whether it's traditions like what Patrick shared with us, a simple song or a poem, or just the ability to have a good laugh every once in a while. I will keep the show coming every month as long as I can and try to come up with interesting topics each month for you. I have no idea what April's going to bring, but I know that we'll do a show in April, and I will keep everybody posted, of course. So keep an eye on the Facebook page and also on my YouTube channel for upcoming events. You know, we got tons of great material there every week. My son has joined the live stream. Ai, jammer, je, Booba. Sag goede Obit aan al die leid. Goede Obit. Tell us to Oscar. The Oscar is 6 years old. He's 6 years old. I told him to stay out of the basement, but now he snuck on anyway. I think that's my cue to wrap this up. So people, there's been tons of great conversation tonight. I hope that you all enjoyed what we had to do for all of you tonight. We'll bring something new for you again next month. That was Glebeni Sufio, not Bula. All right. If you have ideas for future videos on the YouTube channel, you know where to hit me up. Just send me a message. Also, support the channel by buying me a coffee. I will have that link down below. And I look forward to seeing all of you again in 1 month, sometime in April, when we'll have a whole new topic. But until then, take care of yourselves. practice some Eastertide traditions, and you know how I'm going to end it. I do know better. Macht's gut. Okay, people? Macht's gut.
Take a armpit.
Zettel für de lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich date gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht fort, mal weg ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watch sehen. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du scheinst da, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Als ich dir den weißen Dank. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watch sehen.